Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like a client was ready to buy, but suddenly they froze? You hit all your talking points, you nailed the product match, but something invisible pulled them away. Welcome to Plan Life Right. I'm Kevin Ross, and today Matt and I are going deeper. This is the part two of our special series based on the Customer Intelligence Guide.
Now, last time we gave you the first 4 chapters, how to understand why people buy, who really makes the decision, how trust is built, and how certainty is the secret sauce.
Yeah, but now we step into the advanced psychology where talking about buyers' resistance, story framing, influence through alignment, and how to use pattern recognition in conversations.
And I'll share advisor stories, real ones from the trenches. And Kevin's going to pull from other industries like software, medical, even car sales.
Because if you're still just pitching products, you're competing on price. But if you learn how people think, you'll never run out of opportunity.
If you're in sales of any kind, whether you're advising families, pitching SaaS, or selling surgical kits, then this episode will rewire how you approach every conversation. Let's dive in, Kevin.
So, resistance isn't just someone saying no, it's the pause before the yes, the delay and the follow up. It's the let me think about it that never returns. I once had a prospect, pretty smart guy. He was an engineer. He said he loved this annuity product. It was logical, secure, it fit his needs, but then he ghosted. Why? Well, it turns out his father once got swindled into a retirement scam, and the word annuity just triggered distrust. No matter how good my offer was, he just thought like, oh, this is something like what my father got involved in.
Yeah, and didn't Brian Tracy, he said the sale begins when the customer says no.
Right.
What he meant is that, that resistance is usually invisible. It lives in past experiences, fear, or just skepticism. And that's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exactly, that's why in chapter 5, it's about recognizing what's under the surface. You got to ask yourself, what past failure might be blocking this person from moving forward?
And so how do you usually go about uncovering that invisible resistance?
Yeah, you gotta ask a neutral question. Remember, you gotta ask like a memory triggering question. You gotta try something like, what past experiences, good or bad, have shaped how you approach financial decisions you're making today? Or have you ever had a situation, that made you feel hesitant to move forward with a solution that's similar to this? Or, you know, you I want to say you're not digging for drama, you're digging for context, right?
Right. You're kind of like trying to uncover those objections before they have a chance to derail your sale.
That's right.
Basically.
That's right.
And then, the moment that they answer one of those questions, you meet them with, that makes total sense. Well, thanks for trusting me with that.
Yeah. You kind of get on that other side. You align with them instead of being, face to
Right.
face. You're now side by side with them. And when you do that, you've reduced the resistance. And it's not by force, it's really by empathy.
Right.
And that's something that I know comes natural to you. It's natural to me, but a lot of salespeople, that's not natural,
Right.
right?
And you're just getting more back to that point where I'm here to help you rather than
That's
I'm
right.
here to sell you something to get money out
That's
of your
right.
pocket, which is
Right.
that sales resistance. Once they feel that you're just trying to get something out of their pocket, they're going to resist you. It doesn't
That's
matter
right.
how good your deal is, like you said.
Comes adversarial then.
So let's take a stab at this. So advisors, try this. Has anything in your past made you hesitant to work with someone on your finances?
Yeah. So what about software reps? Any tough experiences rolling out tech in the past I should know about so I don't make that same mistake. So you kind of got a little bit of empathy and you're trying to pull on them a little bit. But here's the truth. Most objections don't come from your offer. Listen to this. Most objections don't come from your offer. They come from old wounds wearing new clothes. So the people that you're pitching, it's not about your offer most times. It's really about what's happened to them in the past.
Yeah, old wounds wearing new clothes. That's strong. I mean, and that's easy to remember too, you know?
There you go.
Yeah, who burned you in the past? So I don't try that same method.
Exactly. Yeah, tell me about that story.
Well, Kevin, chapter 6 is where things get powerful. Reframing. This is one of my favorite chapters because it changed how I speak. You've always said facts tell, stories sell. Where did that come from?
Well, from my experience, especially because I'm old, so I've had a lot of them, and actually from neuroscience, it's kind of like why people buy. There's a book about that, why people buy, and it explains that, kind of goes into detail.
Yeah, the thought process behind purchasing.
That's right.
No, I had a woman say once, I just don't believe insurance is worth it, and I didn't argue. I told her about another client, a single mom, didn't trust insurance either. But when her husband passed away suddenly, those are the deaths you don't see coming, those sudden deaths.
Right.
A $500,000 term policy changed her life in that instant. When you're faced with adversity, money doesn't solve all of life's problems, but it does make a lot of those questions easier to answer.
Yeah.
And the woman I was talking to, she leaned in and said, "Tell me more about that."
Yeah. Here's the truth. Logic doesn't change minds, but the story doesn't. And people defend their beliefs, but they replay your stories. It actually got a story that just last week I was talking with an advisor, and he had a client, and I was telling him about, a podcast we did about cash value life insurance, and that, something like 98% of term policies never pay. And he's been a financial advisor for as long as I've been around. And, he said, he goes, yeah, I know that. He goes, I had a client that was in a 30-year term, and it was in the last year of the 30-year term, about 2 months before it was up, and he died suddenly. And it paid $1 million policy. And so now the wife, who's young, I mean, they were in their 50s. They bought it in their 20s, like what we recommend in some of our podcasts. You're in your 20s, it's cheap insurance. So they bought this term, and so unexpectedly, this guy died, suddenly. And so now he's working with the spouse and helping her, through the next 30 years, because she's fine. Thought he was fine, and something suddenly happened, and he passed. So things like that happen. I mean, that
happens fast.
Life happens fast, and that's why we do this, right?
And logic tends to harden defenses, but stories will soften them up a little bit.
That's right. I've had several friends in the medical cells, and one of the guys that I coached just on some selling techniques way back in the day, he told me, he goes, I stopped showing product specs, and I started just telling the doctor stories. Now you got to condense them because you got like 3 minutes, right? But he says, Dr. Simmons, and I made that name up, switched to our tool because it cut prep time in half. And now he sees 3 more patients a day. So he just went into a story like, hey, here's what this does. Forget all the specs that they, this is what you need to tell the doctor. Well, every other rep, all your competition says the same thing because that's what you're supposed to do. But if you come in and you connect on what their real business is, and then how can you solve it? You've solved a problem. You've now gone from, face to face to now side by side, right?
Yeah, it's like instant relevance.
Right. You just got into their world, right? You spoke their language. Here's how to reframe something with the story. So you got to tell a similar client's journey, kind of like the before and after. So you show the struggle and not just the result. So a lot of times you go, well, this is what it's going to do, instead of here's what some of my clients have been facing, what they've struggled with, and by using whatever I'm showing, this has been the result that they've seen. It lets them, the client, the prospect, actually see themselves in the story.
Right. So a story is kind of like a shortcut to trust.
That's right. Here's another thing we can kind of a go-to reframe that I've used in different instances. You say something like, you remind me of a client who felt exactly the same way. And what they found was, and then you tell the before, the during, and after. And when you use that, kind of see the walls come down.
Yeah, it's like kind of like, the stories bypass the brain and they go straight to the heart. And a lot of the times those resistance that you're encountering, it's a difficult subject. It's a scary topic. My retirement, that's scary. Life insurance, that's literally life and death. And a lot of people are scared to be in that boat. And you tell them, you know what? I got a client that was in your exact same boat. Like, oh, well, it's not so scary if there's other people like this.
That's right.
This guy helped that guy. Maybe he can help me too.
That's
You're just generating that trust all along. And, I could go on and on and on. I got this client has this much life insurance. This client has this much life insurance. This client has this much life insurance. That's going to get me 0 sales.
That's
Going in and say, the Thompsons, not only are they set with death benefits, but they're planning for their grandkids' college education with life insurance. Wait, what? Yeah, people in your same boat didn't have it. Now they got it. I got them there. Over and over and over again. This client's doing this with it. This client, they got their life insurance because their brother turned 50 and got a colonoscopy. Stage 4 colon cancer, dead in 90 days.
Right.
Talk to any client that has life insurance. They will tell you the story of why they need life insurance.
That's right.
It goes with any other market that's out there. Sell it with a story.
Yeah, you really put them, when you tell that story, you kind of bring down their defenses, because now they think like, oh, wait a minute, you know what? I'm kind of in that similar situation, or I feel really healthy and I just turned 50 and I do need to get my colonoscopy. I've been putting off because I'm frightened. That was me back in the, and just, you hear, hey, I want to get my colonoscopy. You could also, if you're in the financial, well, before you do that, probably ought to go ahead and just get some life insurance
just
going.
in case, because you never know.
Just in case something goes, because once that hits, guess what? The insurance, they don't want you anymore.
It's like a snake bite. It's like an emergency snake bite kit. You got to have it before the snake bites you.
Exactly.
Because there's nowhere out in the woods to get one of those.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. So if you're in sales, you can't just be selling the features. And so many times I still get calls from people and they're just selling me features. They have never qualified me. They may say they're qualified, or you're the business owner, right? That's their qualification. Well, not like, hey, so what do you guys do exactly? They don't even get into that. They're just like, here's what we do. Here's how we, this is what we could, this is what our product does. I'm like, how did you even get my name? Like, why are you calling me again? Like, and then it's some IT thing. I'm like, I don't even know about IT. I got an IT guy. Yeah. Oh, well, what's his name? No.
Yeah.
It's because they didn't qualify.
Well, you see car salesmen do this all the time. I mean, they've done it to me a number of times. Oh, well, it comes in, it comes with a hitch, so you can just hook it right up to your boat on the day you bring it home. Well, I don't have a boat. Hey, well, when you get a boat, you can haul to the lake with this. And now I see myself not only driving a boat, but now I see myself driving this with my boat behind it to the lake. I don't
Right.
even know if there's a lake for to put
And
in
you
a
probably
boat.
want to share that story instead of you can put a U-Haul behind here and
Exactly,
move
yeah.
stuff out. That's too much work. But a boat, now I'm having
Yeah,
fun.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're not just, you're not just sharing features, you're really you're the narrator of the client's next chapter.
Right. That's
right?
powerful right there.
That's how you got to look at that.
Now, chapter 7 is where I see some advisors miss because we try to fix before we understand.
Right.
They just push when they should walk beside.
Yeah, that's like we said, it's about alignment. You don't win people over by overpowering them. You win them by standing beside them.
Right. It's kind of like sales jujitsu. You use their momentum, not your muscle.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I had a client who was skeptical about index products. That's what we do a lot of here. I didn't push them at all. I aligned with them. I say this so many times over, and I train my wholesale. I get it. This is what I get it. Most people I talk to feel the uncertainty about these items until they see kind of how it works, So would it be helpful if we walk through a real world example? Right. Of course, so
they'll usually say yes to that. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll say yes. And then, it's kind of how you lead to trust. So, I can't tell you how many times I'd have guys that were financial advisors and they knew the security side, they knew the variable annuities, and then they say, "Oh, an indexed annuity, man, that's too complicated." I'm like, whoa. Your variable annuity prospectus is 185 pages long, sometimes even longer. As the years went by, they got even longer. Yeah. This fixed index statement of understanding or disclosure
like 3-4 pages tops.
Yeah, 3-4, maybe. And sometimes now there's 15 or 20, depending on. But it's not, nor hopefully ever will be 187. And by the way, to find out all the different rider features, you got to go to 3 different sections and marry them all together. And I'm like, oh, no. This is super easy. There's 1 or 2 riders. It's all right here. It's this one or this one. Super simple. And once you get them there, there's still maybe a little bit of apprehension of the way now it's too simple. How do they do it? And then you go into that. But now you got them asking you questions, and it's letting you see where they're at, where you're at in their head when they enter.
Yeah. Sales, it's not a debate. It's a duet. Don't look at your client or your prospect as an opponent that's across the table. When you're fighting an opponent, you don't care what page they're on. As long as you get to the end of the book first, that's all that matters.
That's right.
If you're singing a duet,
the last man standing on that.
You're singing a duet. The partner you're singing with better be on your exact same page, or it's just going to sound like a mess. It's going to end up being a mess.
You got to have the chemistry.
So you got to be on that same page and flipping to their side of the table to where you're guiding them and leading them rather than overpowering them, like you say, or just pitching to them and selling the features. You're going to end up losing a lot of deals like that. Flip to their side of the table. Physically get up and walk around to their side of the table and look over their shoulder as you show it to them. Then they feel like you're kind of helping them along. You're a teacher. How many teachers did that to you growing up? Every one of mine did.
Right.
I didn't always get it.
Yeah, right. We were in, I was with my IT. We had a proprietary product. And so we were talking with the CIO, and he told my guy and me, I don't trust small vendors. But instead of defending, I said,
them's fighting words.
It's like, hey, it's a valid concern. In fact, one of our biggest partners felt that same way too, until we outperformed their last 3 suppliers. So what we do different is, we're nimble and we're able to adjust to your needs because we're small and nimble, as opposed to cookie cutter. Well, you got to fit into this, or we're going to have to put one guy on here and you're going to need one of your people, and it's going to cost you $150,000 more because you guys have to learn our programming, as opposed to, well, we're small and nimble.
We can learn yours. We'll
Show
adapt.
us what you're doing, and we can adapt to this and actually make this a lot quicker implementation, which then saves them.
Yeah, and that's alignment.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. Here's a couple more openers. You know, a lot of people in our situation have the same concern. If you guys that are in sales, you young people, even if people that have done it forever, they sometimes forget this base. But if you say it's something as simple as, a lot of people in your situation have that same concern, now you've just they're not standing out there. They feel like, oh, okay, I'm not off base here. Okay. Or another objection when you hear, you could say something like, that's totally fair. Here's what others have found helpful. Okay. Then it's like, oh, wait, okay. So this is a legitimate objection I've had. And
you're validating their feelings.
You're validating their objection, right? Or, let's explore it together. Let's just dive into this together. Right.
Yeah, people kind of feel safe when you don't challenge their beliefs. You walk with them towards clarity. Because
that's right.
I feel such and such, and you're like, you shouldn't feel that way. Like, don't tell me how to feel. Now you've already lost it. That sale's over.
Yeah, you've got into a combative situation.
So get on their side and walk with them.
Yeah, so here's a sticky takeaway that I've used and taught others. Don't aim to change their mind. Aim to stand beside them. And I know we've mentioned alignment. When you alignment creates permission, and permission opens the door to influence.
Yeah. People, they don't trust, defenders. They trust listeners. And when people feel understood, they stop defending and they start listening.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You're not removing objections. That's never going to happen. I mean, don't think that you've got the most perfect presentation and you're not going to get an objection, because you're going to end up getting one, and now all of a sudden it's throwing you for a loop, and it's usually the one that's got all the money, and you haven't prepared for it.
Objection handling is not whack-a-mole. You shouldn't be like, I got that one. No, I got that one. No, I got that one. It shouldn't be at that. If that's your experience in selling, is you are getting objection after objection after objection, you're not aligning. You're not walking beside. You're not explaining.
That's right. Yeah. So remember, you're not removing objections. You're walking through with them the empathy and positioning. Right. That's the key there.
Yeah. Now, chapter 8, pattern recognition and buyer archetypes. I mean, that chapter changed my game. This is where the elite reps are separated from the average one. And, I used to walk into every meeting with one approach. Now I scan people the moment I hear them talk.
Yeah, absolutely. The top 1% don't just talk, they diagnose. They recognize patterns, they recognize buyer types, and then they pivot in real time. You've got I kind of break it down in this. You got the analyzer who wants charts, stats, and logic. Mm-hmm. You've got the emotional buyer who needs the trust, they need the time, and they got to come up with the deep why. You got to hit on that. You've got the authority seeker who cares about status and what their peers are doing. And then you got the risk avoider who needs the guarantee and security. That's really your top 4 types.
Yeah, and this is gold. I mean, if you sell one way, you lose 3 out of 4 times. So you need to figure out who your audience is, and you need to craft your pitch for your audience.
That's exactly it. You got to tailor your pitch. So let's dive into this a little bit. So for the analyzer, here's a way to let me walk you through this data behind why this performs the way it performs. If you've got the emotional buyer, this person seems like they're an emotional type. Here's a way. This plan gives peace of mind for your family. It's not just the numbers. It's really peace of mind. For that authority seeker, several of your peers in the industry use this exact same product. You just put them, oh, wait. Okay,
Yeah. Boy, now I'm late to the party. Yeah.
I'm late to the
FOMO.
party. Exactly. And then you got the risk avoider. This strategy is built for worst case scenarios. It's why people sleep well at night.
Yeah. So sales, it's not just one language.
That's right.
You got to it's more like translation almost.
Mm-hmm.
The more dialects you speak, the bigger your business gets. If you can only pitch to the numbers guys, and there's people out there making a fantastic living pitching numbers to numbers guys, and that's fine. But if you run out of numbers people to pitch to, now what do you do?
Yeah.
Now you got to go back and learn. So wouldn't it make more sense to learn how to pitch to all the buyer types and then walk into the room? It doesn't matter who you're pitching to. You're walking away with a deal.
You kind of, if you're in there and you've got, okay, or I'm in front of 10 people on the board. Well, first you got to you've got to know who the decision makers are. But while you're presenting, and everybody's going to present all their data, I mean, that's just the way it is. You got to see who's looking at that data and who's doodling on the paper or who's looking up in the air. Okay, that could be an emotional buyer, right? Or the doodler that they don't want to make a mistake, so they're just going to be like, I don't want to take any risk, right? So, you gotta be as you're talking to a group, you've got to kind of identify who's who in the group, right? And the better you're at it, sometimes you got to speak 2 or 3 different languages in that deal to get those 2 or 3 different buying decision makers to buy in. And if you do that and master that, that takes you from good to great. Right.
And you can even kind of throw out a joke if you're pitching to 10 people, like, all right, who wants to get the boring stuff out of the way first? Who's into the numbers? The numbers people are going to raise their hands because they're like, I love numbers.
Guarantee that's the accounting department, that's the finance department, or if you're selling things that engineers are involved, it's the engineer guys. But the sales guys, they don't care.
Yeah. So, and when you say, let's get the boring stuff out of the way, your emotional buyers are like, boring stuff. Well, we're going to get that out of the way. Well, then mom might pay attention right now.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't sound like it's going to last that long. I'll listen to
learn how to read the room. And then you'll see a lot faster sales as well too, because you spend 45 minutes pitching numbers to an emotional buyer that's literally just looking for you to say the right buzzword, and then he's going to buy.
Exactly. The win here is it isn't just what you say; it's how quickly you adapt to who they are. So here's something. In your next 5 calls, identify the type of person, the archetype of person that you're speaking to, and adjust your approach accordingly. Watch who responds to that and refine your playbook.
Yeah. For those of you wondering, an archetype is a universally recognized pattern or model of behavior that people often conform to. So in the context of communication, what we're saying by identify your archetype, and that can help you tailor your interaction to better suit that personality, that person's needs and their preferences. Like I said, you don't want to spend an hour on the phone pitching numbers for 45 minutes to somebody that doesn't care about numbers or hates numbers. Right. So you need to get to the point. Is this a logical buyer? Is this an emotional buyer? Is this a fearful buyer? Get to that analysis first. And that's easy to do in just 2 or 3 sentences right off the bat. You can figure out who you're talking to.
That's right. So let's land this with some sticky truths out there. Resistance lives in memory. Find the emotional scar or find that memory behind the objection. Stories reframe beliefs better than logic ever could. It's the bridge between belief and behavior. Right. Alignment creates connection, excuse me. So don't debate it. Walk beside. It's trust in motion is what that is. Great people pattern match and shift their message. So one of the things that, when I was wholesaling, all our calls are recorded, and I didn't know I did this, but I'd call somebody up in the Northeast, and my pitch went quicker.
Mm-hmm.
My speech went a little clearer, more New York style, because I worked up there for a while.
Business class.
And then the next call could be some guy from Alabama, and then I'd slow it way down. Yeah. I didn't even know I was doing that, and they pulled it, and they were like, how are you able to adapt so quickly?
Like a chameleon.
And I was like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, I didn't even know, but it became a lesson. And it's usually when you make that call out, if you're on the phone, people say, oh, it's so hard on the phone. No. When somebody answers that call, you start in a conversation, you can really hear, oh, wait, this guy, you can't assume, well, he's in the Northeast, he's going to talk a million miles to an hour. Usually they do, especially if you're from the South, everybody does up there. But you can speed up that a little bit, or when they're in the South, Alabama or Mississippi, you got to slow it down a little bit and get a little bit of that Southern drawl. And, and I'm not faking that. That's who I am, but I don't talk like that. And I haven't been in Tennessee since I was 20 something.
Yeah.
So, it's in there. Now I can pick a Tennessee. You're from East Tennessee.
Yeah.
You talk like I talk, and I'll go right into that because it's in
natural.
there.
Yeah.
It's natural. So, and living in Florida, everybody's from everywhere.
Yeah, everybody's from everywhere but
Midwesterners. Yeah, everywhere but Florida. You meet somebody from Florida like you, it's like,
they do exist.
Yeah, they do exist. How did that happen? Did you family come over and the war of whatever that was, 1650 from Spain or whatever? Yeah. Who knows? But yeah, it is pretty interesting. And then on this side of the coast, more Midwestern side, you got on the east coast of Florida,
more northeast side.
More northeast side. Yeah, a lot of quick talkers over there on the other side of the coast.
But being able to kind of almost like a chameleon, you can change from being logic type to pulling on heartstrings type, from call to call to call, or sometimes having to adapt inside a presentation because you're pitching to 4 people all at the same time. If you're an advisor, a founder, a wholesaler, or someone just trying to close more with less friction, this is how you level up.
Yeah. So, let me say this: if you want do you want the full system? Do you want the full system? If you do, if you're like, man, I really want to dive into this more deep, then grab the customer intelligence guide and start transforming your sales conversations with some psychology, some empathy and skill. I did this because I'm so passionate about it. And it's a super easy read, quick read.
And advisors, if you're tired of being ghosted or you're sick of chasing deals, book a complimentary strategy call at advisorrescue.net. We'll show you how to scale with precision. You can pitch to me. I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. First thing I'm going to do is tell you what you're doing right, because you're probably doing a lot of great things. You just need some small tweaks here and there, and we can clear that up for you, and then you're on to closing.
Scotty Scheffler, the number 1 golfer, which you don't really watch golf, so you want to know who he is. I could say he's Kevin Ross. I didn't know he's that good. But Scotty has a golf coach. He's had the same golf coach since he was a kid, which that's not the norm, but he's had the same one. Tiger Woods always had a golf coach. So as salespeople or as advisors, to your point, talk to Matt. You're going to get an insight. You got someone else that's there hearing it and can maybe tweak 1 or 2 things that could be a game changer. And over the years, I can't tell you how many times when guys have done that and entrusted themselves with us, we've been able to really help them in their craft. Right. And, anyone else that's out there in the field, listen, keep leading with heart, master your craft. And remember, sales isn't pressure, it's permission. Earn it with empathy and close it with clarity.
Yeah. Follow at Plan Life Right on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you found this episode helpful, share it with an advisor who needs to hear it.
Yeah, until next time, stay sharp, have empathy, and plan your life right.